The Bali round has reinvigorated the World Trade Organization. At the helm is a new chief from the emerging markets, only the second in the history of the organization, Roberto Azevedo. Such a pleasure to have you on NDTV.
My pleasure.
And that's my first question. Just at a time that everyone had written off the WTO's obituaries, the 12-year dead Doha round talks finally seem to have got a new lease of life.
Well, we're back in business. I think that in Bali there were two important deliverables. One was in terms of substance, so the agreements itself, trade facilitation, the agreement on food security, other agricultural things, development issues as well. But there was another very important component, which was the emotional component. I think now we are believing that the multilateral trading system can deliver. And that is an extremely important outcome.
But the food subsidies problem, which has been a key issue for India, and in many ways a lot of people said that Bali was a win for India. Now the food subsidies deal is only struck with a 4-year peace clause. But here in Davos, and I know you're going to India next week, you're going to be meeting the Commerce Minister Anand Sharma tomorrow as well. Are you looking at a more long-running formula?
Well, we have a mandate to negotiate. And I am not sure that the interested parties, India included, want a long-term negotiation. They want a long-term solution. And that's what we'll try to do. I think that everybody is committed to the negotiation. There is nobody in the WTO who believes that this is going to be an easy negotiation. This is going to be extremely complex. And that's precisely why we couldn't complete those negotiations, start and complete, before Bali. So this is going to be complex, this is going to be difficult, but this is going to happen. And I think that that's the positive that we get out of Bali.
You met the U.S. Trade Representative Michael Froman today as well. What does he have to say about this?
I think he's also looking forward. I think from our conversation, the United States showed disposition to negotiate multilaterally. Of course, they are engaged in other free trade agreements, particularly with the EU and also in the Trans-Pacific Initiative. But the multilateral deal is as important for them because of not only in terms of subjects, because you have the ability to negotiate issues, for example, that can never be negotiated in a bilateral agreement, like agricultural subsidies and things like that. But also because the size of the outcomes is so much bigger because everybody's there. For example, the emerging economies are there. They are not in these more limited plurilateral initiatives.
But the U.S. is willing to compromise on food subsidies. Is that a reasonable assumption at this point in time?
They're willing to negotiate. That's what they agreed to in Bali. I think any negotiation involves the perception that some kind of compromise is possible, otherwise you wouldn't agree even to negotiate. Why would you put yourself under pressure to negotiate and to be, at the end of the day, be demanded on things that you cannot do? So if they agree to negotiate, it's because they are in a position to negotiate and find a solution.
But Director General, what does the United States want in return? Because they have the trade facilitation agreement, which you believe fosters $1 trillion in terms of overall global trade. So what does the United States want in return for allowing India to keep its food subsidy program? Because we need it for our poor.
Well, first of all, that's a question you have to ask the U.S., not me. But I would say it's fair to believe that, like I said in Bali, this is just the beginning of the road. So there will be many things that are going to be on the table, many things that are going to be negotiated. So trade-offs which were not made in Bali are clearly on the table from this point forward. We're going to be talking, for example, about the conclusion of the Doha round. If we go in that direction, we're talking about a myriad of issues which are going to be on the table, and therefore trade-offs will be possible in all these areas. I think it's fair to say that there will be plenty of opportunities to find gains for everyone.
A lot of people say that the Bali summit succeeded because it was the low-hanging fruits of the Doha round, and the Doha round, which has been in stalemate for 12 years, cannot succeed at this point in time because the key issues are tariffs on goods and services liberalization, which the developed world and the developing world do not see eye to eye on. So where can a sort of a milder compromise take place? Because the WTO so far has been an all or nothing game.
Look, I hear a lot about this low-hanging fruit story. I've been looking for these low-hanging fruits for a long time. There are no low-hanging fruits in the multilateral negotiations. they're all very difficult. We had been talking about trade facilitation even before the Doha round was launched. It is an extremely complex negotiation. We managed to pull it off, and that's because there was a commitment to do so. I believe that the commitment for concluding the Doha round is there as well. And of course, if we're moving forward with the Doha round, it is difficult to envisage the next steps without a previous conversation about all those difficult issues that we have before us. For example, agriculture. I can't imagine that the WTO members are talking about the conclusion of the Doha round, that they're talking about making further progress, avoiding agriculture, because that is a key element of the negotiations, of the mandate. So if agriculture is on the table, you know, industrial goods, services, all these other areas will have to be on the table as well. So I think that there are no low-hanging fruits, like I said, but I think that we have levers, you know, that can lead us to those fruits. It's a matter of calibrating and making sure that what you put on the table, that what you decide to negotiate is actually doable. And that was the big lesson I think we took from Bali, is that more than what is desirable, you should be negotiating what is possible.
And that's exactly what I'm going to ask you. What is possible for India to do right now, and what is possible for the United States and Europe to do right now?
I don't think anybody knows, frankly. I don't think that India knows. I don't think that the US knows. I don't think the EU knows what is possible. I think this is a conversation we have to have, you know, and it will depend on what is being asked from us. So each one of the players will have to figure out what is it that they want from the Doha round, what is it that is achievable, that they believe is achievable in the next few years, months, years, and then see how much they can contribute, how much they can get. And that is a balance that can only be found after this conversation is deepened. And the conversation is just starting.
But the United States, you think, will compromise on farm subsidies if it gets access to certain markets like India?
Every member of this negotiation knows that there has to be trade-offs. Everything that you get in one area of your interest, you also have to contribute in areas that are of interest to others. Otherwise, there is no negotiation. And that's the rule of the game. I think everybody is perfectly aware of that, and I don't think that any member believes that he can walk out of a negotiation without contributing in some fashion. So I believe that we should trust members that they will do what needs to be done, like they did in Bali.
Okay, so you are definitely here for one term and hopefully for more, but when do you see the conclusion of these talks? Because if it was 12 years since Doha, is it going to be a similar picture from here?
You know, multilateralism is all about balances. Here is another one. On the one hand, you have to have urgency. I don't think the system can take another 10 years to deliver. So it has to be a lot more fast and agile. On the other hand, and this is the other side of the coin, you cannot rush into something without doing it carefully, ensuring that what you're going to try to achieve is actually doable. Otherwise, you would get into this cycle of failures and failures and failures because you're just trying to reach things which are unreachable. And
with elections uncertainty in India, do you feel that the negotiations will not get a roadblock?
Every single year, every single month, there is an election somewhere. So we can't negotiate at the multilateral trading system afraid of elections. Whatever we negotiate in the WTO has to make sense today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. You have to negotiate things that make sense in the long run, and therefore things that would be acceptable to members regardless of the party that is in power or the government that is at the administration at that point in time.
And a final question, you are the first representative really serving the full term from the emerging markets, and that's a big honor. Is it difficult to balance that position? Because you've spoken forcefully from Brazil's side many a time and spoken strongly about what developed countries were mandating in terms of opening access and not giving up farm subsidies. So you do feel India's pain.
I feel everybody's pain. I feel the pain of 160 members. It's very painful, but it's also very gratifying when you get things done. So I thrive with the pain.
Okay, I hope it's not as painful as it's been over the last 12 years, but thank you so much, Director General Azevedo, for speaking with NDTV.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you.